right, so let's talk about conditioning next. And so juxtaposed against strength, people talk about, I gotta get fit, I gotta get my fitness up, I gotta get my cardio up. And this is one of the things people talk about as though this is the key indicator of athletic performance. And the reason I really put conditioning and cardio towards the end is because conditioning and cardio is the quickest element to gain and the quickest element that will go away. What you want to understand is that rarely when we're talking about cardio are you really limited by oxygen. More often than not, you're limited by strength. Let me give you an example. So if you can squat 300 pounds, you squat, you stand up, you're gonna be tired and out of breath. But if your grandma is in a wheelchair and she can hardly stand up, she's gonna stand up and she's out of breath, right? That wasn't cardiovascularly taxing, that wasn't difficult on her conditioning, it was difficult for her strength-wise. So that's what I want you to understand, is that the basis of all conditioning is strength. When you go and you run a mile, as long as you have a base level of general physical preparedness, this base level of conditioning, you're not gonna be limited by your oxygen, your legs are gonna feel heavy, your form is gonna break down, you're gonna fatigue. That has to do with strength. So when we develop a basis of hypertrophy and strength, then we start to look at conditioning. And now within this, what we're looking at is improving the overall ability of three systems: our cardiovascular, our respiratory, and our circulatory. Our cardiovascular system is how well our heart can pump blood through the lungs and then through the body. The circulatory system has to do with how healthy and functional our vessels and veins and arteries are. And our respiratory system is how well our lungs are functioning to exchange oxygen, carbon dioxide through the blood vessels. These are global systems. So if I go on a run, I'm gonna challenge that. If I swim, if I bike, if I row, if I do rope slams, if I do anything that's gonna be cardiovascularly taxing, I'm challenging the system. That's the beauty of cardio, is that you can work on it almost every day and it doesn't have to be this same thing. So if I want to be better at running, that is a skill, but the conditioning cardio point, I can train. Even if I hurt my ankle, you can still keep your cardiovascular system up and not lose that, right? So you can maintain that almost year round. But the way you do it matters. So if I want to run and I hurt my ankle, what I will lose, even if my cardio stays the same, is the skill and the strength of my legs in that form. So understand, within cardio, there's a special skill, a specific ability to do the movement, and then there's the overall system and ability for your body to get oxygen and function and filter that effectively. So, 2 points, 2 takeaways here is that we don't prioritize conditioning until 2 to 4 weeks before you really step back into the season. Why? Because we're busy building the skill that is strength. But when it comes time, we hit it hard. And the way you train conditioning hard is that you do different energy systems and you do different modalities. We talked about the modalities. It doesn't really matter what you do. You can shift things up and hit different things. So if you want to prioritize running, that's great. But going from not running to running 7 days a week is going to ask for injury because you're not ready for that. But you can do conditioning 7 days a week, run 3 to 4 days a week, and then do some type of swimming, biking, rowing, rope slams, you name it, on the other days. The other part of that is energy systems. Now there's 3 energy systems. There's explosive, quick, fast, what's called the creatine phosphate energy system. And that's where it's 10 to 15 second lengths of movement. That's gonna be really explosive, short sprints, weightlifting. The ability for that, you can't train that in as much as you can improve the recovery from that. So your body's ability to handle and shuttle lactic acid, the acidic byproducts from the use of being anaerobic. So when you are anaerobic, you're breaking down things, substrate for energy without using oxygen. And that's kind of like saying, I got a whole bunch of stuff coming in, but I can't really deal with it effectively, so I get a bunch of clothes. Better analogy, if you're at home and you have a whole bunch of clothes to fold and put away, but you run out of time, you just kind of get scattered, right? You don't have time to do your laundry, so things seem a bit scattered and all over the place, right? But if you have time and you care, then you're probably gonna fold your clothes and put them away. So in the right timing, you're gonna manage everything and it's gonna be smooth and organized. That's the difference between quick, explosive, anaerobic work and then long-term aerobic work. So moving from the creatine phosphate, which is this 10 to 15 second energy system, we have what's called the anaerobic or the lactic threshold. So this is gonna be this 15 to 60 seconds max. This is where you don't really use oxygen, but it's not as explosive and fast as the creatine phosphate, but it's definitely not as slow as the aerobic would be. This is the equivalent of running a 400 meter. You're running, you're working, you're driving, and then all of a sudden you start to feel this kind of burn and everything's like, oh my gosh, my muscles are failing. That's because you've run out of your capacity to work in this lactic acid system. So this is where you're burning and breaking down glucose anaerobically. The third is going to be slow, long, and steady work. So this is going to be in this aerobic system. So it's slow enough that your body can to keep up with the demand of breaking down glucose for energy while also using oxygen for that system. This is why you could walk forever, right? And you could jog for a long time. You could run for less time, you could sprint for less, and you could all-out sprint for less. And you could see this as you're doing this. The only difference is the demand your body is placing on the amount of oxygen and carbon dioxide that are coming in and out of your body and how quickly you can do that. So the better shape you get, it's two things. You get better at understanding the physical difficulty of what's going on in your body and in your mind, and then you also get better at effectively cycling through the substrate you need to break down for this, right? So the big takeaways here: conditioning is important, but not nearly as important as strength. And then we focus on that, and when you do work on it, you hit it hard with things that are going to be short explosive, shuttles, intermittent times, sprints, things that are going to be that 15 to 40 second intervals, and so you're doing repetitions back and forth. And then you're doing some form of 20 or longer or some form of 20-minute or longer aerobic work to develop a base of this aerobic system, right? Next, we're going to talk about speed, agility, and plyometrics, and how to challenge and develop each of those factors.